Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jared Moon here with Ashley Hicks. What's up, Ashley?
What's up?
And Kyle Schrum. What's up, Kyle?
Hey.
Hey. And guess who's not here?
Joe.
Bum, bum, bum.
No, Joe.
He's not. I think this is the first since we started the new style in which he's not here. But everyone else listening they're kind of accustomed to maybe hearing my voice just by myself at times. So maybe it's not that odd. Well, anyway, he's not going to be here. But we have an awesome podcast. We're going to be talking about concurrent training, really anything and everything concurrent training. And yeah, I'm not going to, we're going to dive into that. I'll let you know how I feel about everything as we dive a little bit deeper. And then we're also going to be talking about the book, Why We Sleep. That was this month's book. And so if you're not a part of the book club, you can kind of, if you find the Facebook group, I email it out pretty frequently. You can find it in the Garage Gym Athlete Facebook group there. You can join the book club. And the next book, so we just finished Why We Sleep. The next one is it Atomic Habits?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so that'll be Atomic Habits for next month. If you guys want to check it out, we'll be doing that at the end of March on the podcast and covering that. Or you can now read the book and just wait for us to give you some updates. All right. So we will do updates now. Ashley, how's life?
Life is good. We just got back from a trip to Atlanta, visited my brother, and he lives with his girlfriend and her parents. And it was quite an interesting trip my brother is just an interesting character. Him and I are like opposites in every way possible. So, but it was very eye-opening for nutrition. You know, I'm surrounded by, we talk all the time by you guys, and then a lot of Air Force ladies here that are, they eat very holistic, very good food for you, essentially, not crap, not junk. And it was just very funny to go somewhere where the pantry is filled with nothing but boxed goods. And as a thank you, I decided I was going to cook them dinner. And I just did a simple, easy, I roasted 2 chickens, some potatoes, and I made a salad, like something that maybe took me an hour. And they acted like I made a gourmet meal. They were super appreciative of it, but they were like, "You're such a great cook." And I'm like, I literally used salt, pepper, olive oil, and garlic powder. That's it.
Not used to that fancy stuff.
No, they're not. But it was crazy to see like the amount of candy and cookies, and they eat cereal for dinner and all sorts of stuff. And anyways,
I mean, that's the crazy part. I am often reminded about, because there's a gigantic problem in the United States. I mean, really worldwide. Like, it's happening in Europe, it's happening in China. Like, it's really happening everywhere. Refined sugars being put in everything, and overconsumption, but we're not exposed to it as much as, say, everyone else, you know. But it is the majority of people in the world, who eat like that and have these poor diets. And even people listening to the podcast right now probably don't realize how ridiculous people's diets can get, or what people are doing on a daily basis, or how much thought doesn't go into what they put in their mouths. It's just kind of crazy. Yeah,
most definitely. So I hope I controlled my facial expressions when I opened the fridge door. I'm not very judgmental, but I am that person in the grocery store where I'm like, what are you putting in your cart? What are you doing?
What are you eating?
What are you eating?
Oh, you must hate your kids for feeding them that stuff.
That's where it gets...
Maybe that's a little extreme.
Yeah, that's where it gets crazy.
That's a little too crazy. And then lastly, we're doing this awesome thing with the spouses here with Scott Squadron. And they give us a weekend for the ladies, and you get a child free, like it's all the ladies. We spend the night, we get an Airbnb, and we're going down to 30A, which is just this highway that's down by basically on the water. And we're running this awesome Airbnb out. And so they found out that I work with, End of 3 Fitness. And so they were like, hey, Saturday morning, do you want to do a workout? And I'm like, yeah, let's do one. But then I thought, man, it's a Meet Yourself Saturday workout for me. Obviously I can't go crazy because who knows
I already have a suggestion if you're wondering.
Ooh, I will totally take it. But they were like, can we please get like a good workout and then maybe like a yoga session? And I'm like, I don't really do yoga, but I can give you some good stretches? ? Anyways.
Dynamic stretches.
Well, to begin with, but at the end, they want like a yoga session as a cool down.
So EO3 5K. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't call it that because you get the word 5K thrown in there and people get all like screwed up. So just call it, just rename it something, calisthenics and running.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
That's it.
So my suggestion was 25-minute lunge test.
No.
That's one way to do it.
In the sand.
Ugh.
Or just do like a half an EO3 5K or something. I think
that's what I was thinking. I would probably half that thing.
Let's never get invited to ladies' weekend ever again.
But if you do the 5K, don't call it that. You just like map it out on the beach or whatever. You're like, hey, we're going to run down there, come back here, do a couple rounds of push-ups, sit-ups, and squats. We'll do that, like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Really, it's going to be 6 times. And then just call it at that 50-minute mark. And then whoever finished, be like, congratulations, you did a 5K and like a lot of calisthenics. So
you're a smart man. Yeah. Hopefully whoever is listening to this podcast is not in the squadron because then they're going to know what we're doing on Saturday.
Hey.
But hey, whatever.
They might. Kyle, updates from you, man.
So my update is an interesting one. It was 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. Yeah. A couple weeks ago when I actually did it, but one of our athletes, Kurt from, he lived in Kennesaw. He ran the Spartan with us back in November. So we have a special bond there. Anyway, Kurt is going to be moving around the country for his job for the next 2 or 3 years. He and his family will be moving around. And so they're not going to be in any one place for very long. And so they were needing to do something with their garage gym stuff. And so they didn't want to sell it. They didn't want to pay to store it. And so he just kind of put up a post, kind of bemoaning the fact that he was having to figure out something to do with his garage gym. And I half jokingly suggested, just commented on the post and said,
hopingly joking.
Yeah. I'd be more than happy to let you, store it at my house. You know what I mean? And, it was just, I just threw that in there, just kind of joking around. But he messaged me and was like, I don't know if you were serious or not, but if you were, let's make a deal. So long story short, I drove down in a monsoon with my truck and rented a U-Haul trailer and hauled all of his gym equipment up to my house. And
That's
so
awesome.
Now I have basically 2 garage gyms because I got like his squat rack and his bumpers and his bar and some.
Well, it's good because aren't you and Hannah going together, like working out together?
Yeah, and that's the big thing. Actually, earlier this week, we both had to push our workout to the evening, and so actually, I was able to use one rack, and she was able to use another rack, and we both did completely different workouts, but we worked out simultaneously. So
that's awesome.
Kurt, if you're listening. Not sure you'll get your stuff back, but no, I'm just kidding. I'll give it all back, but I'm going to get over the next couple of years, I'm going to get used to having, double the stuff. And so I'm going to have to start a savings account so I can just replace all of it when he comes back to get it.
Kurt's the man.
He is the man.
I'll never forget his face when we side by side went under the water thing at the Spartan race. Mm-hmm. Everyone remembers that moment just because it's cold and it was like, you're so done. But then there's like, you weren't anywhere close to done.
You weren't done.
And we both like went underwater, came up, looked at each other. And I obviously didn't get to see my face, but I got to see his face. And it was like, I'm done. I'm done. And he had been like smiling the whole race up until that point.
He had the best attitude about it out of all of us.
He did. He was so great.
Everyone has their breaking point, though.
My only thing to you, man, is you're going to have to start a savings account for garage gym equipment because you can't go back. Like he'll come get that stuff and you'll be like, I'm going to need all this. So I'm buying it all.
Either I'm just giving him cash to buy new stuff or I'm saving cash to buy my own stuff to give him
save
his
like
back.
a quarter a day or like $1 a day or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't know. Like every time I use it, I'll just have to drop something in a jar.
That's a good idea.
My self-membership fee. But yeah, I'm already hooked on it. So it's kind of like Dwight Schrute with Megadesk. Like,
yeah,
some people will get that. Some people won't.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a bold reference. All right, updates for me. I have two. One, I got a bunch of blood work done, which, I only ever really used to get blood work done in the military, and they would do all sorts of things and never tell you about it. So they'd be like, hey, you need to go in and get blood work done. I'm like, roger that. Go get the blood work done. And then after it's done, they're kind of like, you're good. It's like, can I see any of it? Like, is it?
What was the panel for? Yeah.
They're like, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, all right, cool. I guess I'm good. They say I'm good.
Dude, they're cloning you, bro.
Yeah. And so that I never really got to see any of the numbers. So this is really my first time to like really dive into a lot of different stuff. And drum roll, I'm pretty much good. I'm good. There's nothing too crazy. Trying to think of just things in general. Like,
what did you have tested?
A lot. I mean,
okay.
His blood.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, there are, I think there were like 7 different like types of tests done that reveal probably in total like 114 different things from like, electrolyte levels to C-reactive protein to like vitamin D levels and all that other stuff. And there's just a lot. So my vitamin D level was actually one of the main things, was a little bit lower, but it's the winter. I haven't been supplementing. So that was the only thing that was like a little bit off, but it wasn't low though. It wasn't like functionally low. It's just could be higher. Because there's also, if you get too high, then there's problems with vitamin D levels that are too high too. So anyway, I do think that people should check that stuff out. It's something I'm going to start doing probably every 6 months and just monitor those things and see how they fluctuate. I'd love to see what my vitamin D levels are like in the middle of summer. Because the whole, like we have in the elements, like go out, get some vitamin D. And I think that's really important. And I'll even talk about that in the sleep book that we get into today. But I don't, everybody's winter's a little bit different. With Texas, it's just really cloudy often. It's almost like Seattle in the winter. It doesn't get super cold, but the sun is not out often enough. And when it is, I go, I run outside and get the sunshine on the skin. But it's really hard to get vitamin D the right way, because I don't really like supplementing with it. I'm not a huge fan of supplementation in general. So yeah, that was the only thing. And then Murph. So Murph is over. We haven't talked about it a lot. But
Congratulations.
What? Here's my biggest takeaway. It's the same takeaway as last time. Is the Murph jacks with your central nervous system. It does. Like, it truly does. And in a way that you don't really realize it till it's over. And I really only think it's if you're going as hard as I would almost on a weekly basis. I'd rarely, I don't see a lot of point in like doing the project if you're just going to like half-ass Murph. Like if you're just going to, I did that like occasionally if I was like really beat down or something, but for the most part, I went really hard. And I just feel more like it kind of would like zap my motivation to like train heavy or like really hard during the week. I'd still get the training done, but I'd never be like, yeah, let's get those 2 extra reps with, 400 pounds or what, I would never, I'd just be like, I'm good. Like I lifted the weight, I'm good. And so that's something, like I said, you don't really realize till it's all over. You're like, oh yeah, I feel like my training was a little bit different. And was that for a full year? But I took some time to max out on everything, and my strength levels didn't really get hurt. A little bit less in the squat than I was previously, but deadlift and pressing strength is about the same. Actually, pressing strength is probably a little bit increased. And yeah, that was it. I just want to give an update on Murph. Anybody who's doing it, like just try and be aware of those things. Because I think with overtraining, I definitely didn't see any symptoms of that. But with overtraining, like we always talk about the two different types. Like there's volume, too much volume, which is fairly easy to find out if you're hitting too much volume because your knees are going to hurt, your elbows are going to hurt, like whatever. But it's harder to tell when you're jacking with your central nervous system too much or too hard. And that's generally with intensity, because Murph is like, how I was doing Murph is like the opposite of how I suggest training. Like it's like zone 4, zone 5 for almost a half hour. Like I don't like doing it. And so, I'm going to try and do it a lot less. But anyway, that's my Murph update, because I know there are some people still doing it, people thinking about it. I get messages on Instagram like every day of like, hey, I'm starting my year of Murph. I'm like, awesome. Like good luck.
Good luck.
But I try to throw out this information there as well.
Now you came out on top time wise, right?
I did.
You beat VD.
I did beat VD. Thanks for bringing that up.
I feel like people are going to be wondering,
Oh yeah, like I was just trying to sweep it under the rug. No, I should have led with that.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the difference was. I think it's like
20 seconds.
Yeah, it's like 20 seconds.
Yeah, it was close.
And it was from that one time where like I got all angry and was like, all right, I'm gonna go get him. I'm gonna go harder here, because he beat me once, and then I just went like crazy. Anyway, I was 17 seconds off my PR, my last Murph attempt, which is still 3 seconds faster than VD's fast time, but it was okay. Just trying to throw a couple more shots, but we can move on. So that's Murph and blood work and updates.
Awesome.
Good.
Do we need to do a PT update for Joe, or
none of us are
injury
hurt? So
update for Joe?
Let's see. Anybody get a massage at a physical therapy location? No. Okay. All right. Then I guess we could just talk science and sleep.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So the study, I'm going to briefly introduce it. Then it's long. And a big reason I wanted to talk about this one is because we talk a lot about concurrent training. I may have read every training on, or every study on concurrent training out there. I try to like catch up on them and see what they're doing, because it's a very complex scientific field for concurrent training. And we're going to give you a lot of like what the best is today. And the reason I like this study is because we can link to it in the show notes. You guys can go check it out. But within this study, it probably links out to or references 100 other studies. Mm-hmm. And that's why I kind of like it. I don't necessarily agree with everything they said, but it's really only like one thing. And it's not big. I just wish they would have dove into something, one part a little bit more, or done a little bit more research in their systematic review, because that's what it is. And they just talk about, they give you all the takeaways from concurrent training. I review this entire study and look at it from a programming standpoint. How can I make our programming better? What can I do? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And that's the way I look at these things. So it was published in 2018, which is fairly recent for concurrent training. And it's called A Brief Review on Concurrent Training from Laboratory to the Field. So they're basically trying to take the science and give you the best idea of what you should do when you are periodizing your programming and doing all that fun stuff. Now, the only mechanism I want to talk about before you guys introduce your ideas, your takeaways, was there's the interference effect or concurrent training effect. I guess they're calling it the concurrent training effect now. That was actually introduced to me in this study. I've always referred to it as the interference effect. That's what's in textbooks and everything else. But anyway, it's just like, all that means is, how do they interfere with each other? How does endurance training affect your strength gains or hypertrophy, your muscle gain? And the other way around, could strength training reduce endurance training, or does it increase it? All these things. So there's this concurrent training effect. And it seems that AMPK inhibits mTOR, which is the cause for muscle hypertrophy and strength increases. And we kind of talked about this on another podcast, but that seems to be like the main mechanism behind all of this. And I tried, because everything else I read in here with a systematic review, like if you dive into it and you start looking at all these pathways and receptors, like just do a control F in the document of the word probably. And that annoys me, especially when it's in a systematic review. And so that's the only mechanism I want to talk about, because they have a lot of other ones in there talking about all these, PGC1 alpha, all this other stuff that no one really cares about who's listening to the podcast. I don't care about it. You guys probably don't care about it. But everything else is like an asterisk with a probably. They're like, oh, this probably happens for this reason. But the only one that they're fairly certain is that AMPK inhibits AKT-mTOR, which is the muscle hypertrophy, which helps muscle hypertrophy and muscle growth. So anyway, keep that in mind, and because it's going to help some of my points later. That is pulled directly from the study, but I'd love to know, Ashley, what you got from the study.
So I think we've kind of hit on it in previous podcasts before. We've talked a lot about volume and intensity and high intensity training and whatnot. So the thing I took away from this study is that concurrent training, doing both resistance and endurance training, will not inhibit you from getting gains. In fact, I wrote some things down here, so I'm just going to kind of reference that, but I'm going to take some actual specific quotes from the study. And they talked about the concurrent training effect and how the volume, the intensity type, aka how hard you go, is it super high intensity, or are you taking it back, talking zone 2, like what we kind of do sometimes, and frequency of endurance training strongly affect that. So much so that they talked about low volume and short bouts of HIIT have a lower or even no negative effect on your resistance training. So what I take away from that is that for us, we talk a lot about of our VO2 max and living longer and being a better human. And you want to get that good endurance training in. I'm not going to steal your point, Kyle, but they did touch on bicycling. So I'm going to let you talk all about that. But for us as garage gym athletes, what I think this means is that with our programming, we're touching those things. We're doing the resistance training. We're doing that sometimes low intensity, the amount of volume that we need to get in. Like, this is really thought out in our training. And so that's what hit home for me here, was that you want both the resistance and that endurance training, and concurrent training is actually going to make you a better athlete. They talked about, even for endurance athletes, that concurrent training gave the athletes more endurance capacity than someone who just does endurance alone. In this article, they talked about that, saying that they tested that out, and I guess the people who were doing concurrent training had far more endurance capacity than those who were just running or just bicycling for long periods of time. So before I keep rambling, Kyle, do you want to shoot some points off just so I don't take yours?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I pulled out of it was actually something that we talked about the last time we talked about concurrent training, which is that evidence suggests that training goals should determine your training order, right? So if you want to build more muscle and you want to gain strength, then you need to do strength first. If you want to gain endurance, then you need to train endurance first. And there's not really anything wrong with putting the two together, but whichever one you want to prioritize, whatever the end goal, say, of your 12-week program is, that's what needs to be prioritized in your individual training sessions. And they actually gave ratios of 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. In other words, do twice as much strength work as endurance work, or 3 times as much strength work as endurance work, based on your goals, or vice versa. And so it just kind of reinforces that prioritizing your goals first will kind of determine the way that you program. And that's the way that it should go. And something else that we talked about last time was that rest in between. And so in between sessions. And so they give like a 6 to 24 hour rest period in between sessions, depending on which one you're doing. And I think it's on the lower end of the spectrum if you're training strength first versus if you're training endurance first. Or if you're prioritizing strength or if you're prioritizing endurance. I think it's higher on the end if you're prioritizing endurance, you need more rest in between. But basically, once you hit the 24-hour mark, it doesn't matter what you train. It's not going to affect, like, one is not going to affect the other anymore. Like, you've basically kind of wiped that out. So those are some things that I took away. Also, as I was reading lower down into the study, it kind of got to a point where they started talking about how performance was not increasing and things like that with concurrent training. And I had to really zero in on that and figure out what they were saying. But basically what they were saying is that because they were talking about experience and training history and how that affects CTE. And basically what it is the longer you work out, the slower your gains get, right? In other words, you're not making as much progress. But the reason is because you're more fit. So like, I finally figured that out, and I was like, oh yeah, duh. The longer you do something, the better you get at it, which means you don't make as much progress in it anymore over time, because you're actually just better at it and more efficient. And so they were kind of talking about that, of how people who have used concurrent training over the long term are not making as significant performance gains, but that just means that they're more fit now than they were when they started. And that's all that means. So it kind of freaked me out for a second, because it sounded like they were kind of contradicting everything that they were saying, where they were talking about the benefits of concurrent training. Then they talked about how your performance dropped off the longer you did it, but it's not your performance, it's your performance improvement. And
yeah, because it's just too hard for them to do studies for that long.
Right. And you're already good at it. And that goes with anything. The more you do it, the better you get at it, which means but your intervals of gains decrease over time because you're already good at it. So that's all that means.
And there's so many different things to measure in fitness. And that's kind of what I'm doing today, just personally. Like, I've been stronger than I am now. And, I don't know if I'll ever exceed my highest level of strength, I don't have the desire to do it right now. And because that was like almost purely strength training with a little bit of conditioning. And now, they're closer to matched. But there are other things that you notice, like I'm still pretty strong, and so but I've always been able to do like a 6-minute mile. But a 6-minute mile or faster a few years ago was like a sprint, and I could do it one time and I was spent. Now I could do 6-minute miles, 1-to-1 work to rest. So 6 minutes on, 6 minutes of rest, probably for 5 or 6 miles, and hit the same splits every single time. But the mile's not faster, right? Like, because that's almost a different type of training to get like to 5 minutes or below. That's more speed training. It's like completely different. So I'm not actually getting like maybe top end speed faster. So, the only thing we're measuring is my repeatability of those efforts, which would mean my aerobic endurance is better. And I'm probably utilizing a different energy system to run a 6-minute mile, as opposed to being like purely glycolytic for 6 minutes and like stressing that system out. But where would that show up in a study? If they're like, okay, we followed you for 10 years, you're still running a 6-minute mile. I'm like, whoa, it's a lot easier now. My heart rate is much less and I can do it multiple times. They're like, well, we didn't do that. We didn't measure that at the beginning. So, what are we going to do with you? So there's just a lot of ways that you can tell if your fitness is improving. And what I didn't like about this study is if you were to read it and not dive in further like you did, or actually click some of the links out to see like, okay, what are you talking about here? Because they link to a lot of stuff. What your takeaway would be: train strength and go do high intensity interval training. That would be the takeaway. I mean, that's one of the big takeaways I got. That's even one of the ones they wrote down as kind of like the main thing. They're like, hey, you should be doing high intensity interval training and strength training. That's it. We're done. Like that's how you should do it. But this is where it becomes problematic for me, because I keep a notebook of basically, and maybe I'll publish this one day as an actual book, but I keep a notebook of like programming principles. And so I read studies like this all the time. I try to take out something useful that can help me in my programming for Garage Gym Athlete. And I kind of write down these principles, the ideas and mechanisms behind it, so I have a good understanding. But then, so I would read a study like this and I'll start writing stuff down, but then I'll be like, wait a minute, this conflicts with stuff I already have in this notebook. And this happens to me all the time. like all the freaking time. I'm like, wait a minute. From a scientific study I read 2 years ago, what you're saying is not the same. Like it's actually like the opposite. And so that's why I think this is really, it's a very hard topic to fully understand, because there seems to be what I'm pulling from my own, not my own data, just reading through all these different studies over a long period of time, is that we kind of talked about high intensity interval training. And when we say high intensity interval training, we're talking about 10 to 60 seconds, like a really hard bout followed by almost near full recovery. So like you're almost fully recovered before you hit another. So that's high intensity interval training, not high intensity training. Like I've already put the high intensity thing to bed, right? Like I don't need to talk about it anymore. But high intensity interval training has less of a negative impact. But then for some reason in this study, and this is my biggest problem, they then leap with no further links to saying, okay, well, like lesser intensity is going to be problematic. Like they're saying if you're doing, I think it was greater than 20 minutes at less than 85% max heart rate, high volume is going to increase the concurrent training effect. That's what they wrote down, or that's what they have in the study. And I'm like, well, I have information that completely, 2 other studies on concurrent training that basically say that's not true, that you can do anything less than like 70% for sustained periods has almost no recognizable CTE, concurrent training effect,
right.
And doesn't inhibit mTOR and all this other stuff. So that's where it gets really complicated. And the thing that I don't like is there aren't a lot of like 1-for-1 answers in this field. And so we have to just keep reading and researching. But for the most part, there's some really good takeaways. So that was like a long-winded response to just say, seems like high intensity interval training is good. If you're doing, so really high intensity, lower volume, meaning you're not doing this for an hour, you're doing, a lot like what we program for high intensity type stuff, with those full recovery rest periods. And then I would say then down to zone 2 would be okay. But that middle spot that they're talking about, they do reference. I don't know this from a scientific standpoint and they don't cover it, but I feel like that might be the more, the danger zone for concurrent training. So like a true moderate level, so above zone 2, like so zone 3 to say zone 4 for a long period of time, let's say 40 minutes, that might be the most detrimental to your quote unquote gains. Now that's not what they said in the study. You kind of have to read in between the lines to get that. But there's a lot of stuff saying, hey, zone 2 is basically, it's whatever, like it's fine. And you're just burning pure fat. There's not a lot of, the only way it would be an effect is if you're trying to do bicep curls while you're walking in zone 2, like that might not work, but doing them completely separate doesn't seem to have a problem. So what I want to find out more of is if I'm right there. This zone 3, zone 4 for 30, 40 minutes, which is how a lot of people run, because running is so freaking taxing, that might be the worst thing you can do for your gains. And so I will come back to the podcast at some point when I have a for sure answer, but reading between the lines of this study and many other studies, that seems to be what the case is. All right. Any other points from you guys?
Nope.
Oh, buy a bike. According to this study, it says one of their conclusions, they have a list of 9 conclusions that they took away from all this huge meta-analysis that they were doing. But takeaway number 4 on their list is, where possible, prefer cycling over other types of endurance training. And I think we kind of talked about that a little bit on the last time we talked about concurrent training, that over time, that with enough volume, that cycling kind of just outpaces all the other endurance. And so this is just kind of another thing to say, hey, you should be cycling if you can. And it's specific. This study is specifically talking to coaches. I think they highlighted that a couple times, that, and these specific conclusions were for coaches when you're programming your training for your people. And that's why it's worded that way, is, hey, coaches, where possible, prefer cycling over other types of endurance training. So I can't really make a plug for that because I don't bike. I don't cycle. Do you call it cycle?
I do.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't ride a bike. I'm going to say that I don't ride a bike. I don't own a bike. So, but it seems really interesting. And after the last study that we talked about, and then after talking about this one again, it's something that sounds pretty cool to me. Mainly because, as everyone I think in the group knows now, I absolutely hate running. Hate it with everything in me. So, but
I think I agree. Like every study I've seen, to include this one, going all the way back to like the landmark groundbreaking study on concurrent training in the 1980s with Hickson, biking just has always had the best results, like of when you're mixing. And my theory behind it is that, well, one, you can hop on like zone 2 on a bike is really easy to achieve and stay there. Running, like you might have to like run and I got to walk a little bit, like to find that pace. Like it's real easy to dial things in on a bike. And I think you can just control your power and everything else so much better. And there's really way more muscular involvement, and they don't talk about that, but I wonder if that's one of the mechanisms behind it, because your legs, like, you need muscles in your legs to be a good cyclist, and they will get used in every like energy system training you could do on a bike. So I think you can dial things in a lot more on a bike, and utilizes more muscles. So I think that's my theory behind it, my simple theory behind it, because running is just so freaking taxing. Like it's so taxing on the body. Like it's a high impact. I know when I run, I mean, the only thing that's worse for me is the Airdyne, which I guess is technically like a bike, but it's not. It's nothing like a true bike. And so just to read some of these, I'm not going to read all of them. I'm going to go through. They had 9 takeaways. You guys can go check them out. I'll just kind of summarize for everybody a few of them. If you are going to do high intensity training, make sure you keep the volume pretty low. Really, so we're already like, if you're following our programming, we're already keeping a lot of these things. Like it straight up says in the study, it's like, hey, we found that if you're doing this hit, less than 85% low volume, 10 to 60 seconds with full recovery, that it can actually increase your strength or power over just strength training alone. And like, that's the strength track. Like that's like what we program in the strength track. It's like how it works. With an occasional zone 2 every like month, which, freaks everybody out, but it's the fat burn that you still need in there. So anyway, keep that in mind. But I think the biggest takeaway is going to be separating training. So if you could do strength one day, conditioning the next day, or at least breaking them up by a certain amount of time. Some studies say 20 minutes, some say 3 hours. Like that's where it's not super
conclusive.
Conclusive. And then training experience is huge with this. If you're an experienced athlete, it might be looking into this a little bit more seriously because there's things that they're talking about crosstalk and crossover with it sounds like if you're a really experienced strength athlete, you could go and do endurance training. Your body would be so confused that it would still stimulate some of the strength mechanisms and pathways and hormones and stuff, because your body's like, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but we're just going to do what we've always done. and so it sounds pretty crazy. But anyway, break stuff up and do high intensity training correctly, and throw in some zone 2 is my caveat there, because that wasn't in this study, but we can put that in the show notes. I have 2 other studies that's like, hey, low intensity seems to have no effect whatsoever. So anyway, there you go. That's all I got. Now on to why we sleep.
Not why we don't sleep.
Not why we don't sleep.
Joe.
Well, he's still going to get plenty of mentions here. Okay.
Still technically here.
So Why We Sleep by Matt Walker. I know everybody knows we need to sleep, right? It's a big deal. But this book really breaks down a lot of the why behind it. It might kind of scare you into getting some more sleep. I mentioned on the podcast already, I read this book and stopped waking up early because, and I want to talk about the difference I've seen, because I don't know how long it's been now. Maybe it's been 3 months since I started doing that. So I used to wake up at 4 a.m. Or 5 a.m. at the latest to do like a morning routine. And there have been periods in my life where I felt like that was super beneficial, but I honestly was getting to a point where I'm like, I don't really know why I'm doing this anymore. It's just because I've always been doing it. It's not really helping me with anything else. And then I also read this book, and I was like, I'm shortchanging myself here like an hour. So when I'm only getting probably 7 hours of sleep at waking up at, like, say, let's just say 4:30, and anything goes wrong in the night at all, like I wake up to go to the bathroom, or it takes me longer to fall asleep than normal, now I'm dropping into the 6 to 7 hour range, not the 7 hour range. And so I flipped that to now waking up at 6. So if I go to bed at 9, that's 9 full hours I have a potential there, or at least 8, right? Even if things go wrong. So I'm getting at least 8, max 9. And what I found out, it's pretty interesting, or my journey through this process, if you will. I started sleeping, I would sleep almost 9 hours every day. Once I started doing that, almost every single day, and I'd be surprised, like, how do you sleep 9 hours? And because I'd never really done that before. But then eventually it's like my body caught up from that sleep debt. And then I started sleeping like 8.5, then 8:15, and then 8. And then now it's like, because I'm so consistent in getting this longer period of sleep, really 7 hours, 50 minutes to 8 hours and 15 minutes is about how long I sleep. I wake up fully rested. I don't get tired by the end of the day. Like, it's just, that seems to be the optimal window. But there was almost a month of like getting almost 9 hours of sleep, because my body was like, thank you so much for deciding to do this. And anyway, we can get into like takeaways from the book, but that's kind of been my sleep journey so far. See, who wants to go first? Kyle does, because he went second earlier. Yeah. What you got, man?
That's it. So I'll kind of share. I've been wearing a Fitbit for a little while now, and I'm not going to do a review on Fitbit right now. I have mixed feelings about it. But one thing that's been good is having sleep tracking. So also something I had to get used to was wearing a watch to bed, which was really weird there for a minute. But so looking back at my data over the last week, and especially since I've been reading this book and I'm just really thinking about it, over the last week, I'm averaging 6 hours and 23 minutes, which according to the book is not great.
It's garbage.
Okay, thanks.
Tell it like
over the last month, it's 6 hours, 36 minutes. You go back to 3 months, it's 6.5 hours exactly. So over the last 3 months, I've averaged 6.5 hours of sleep. So yeah, according to the book, that's not where you want to be. So just their optimal range. The book really emphasizes like you need to be getting 8 hours. Like that's what you need to be getting for most people. That's like the optimal range. So I'm pretty far under. So
they're like, yeah, we know you heard the 8 hour thing, but no, seriously, 8 hours.
No, seriously. Well, and also something that I've gathered from the book is like why we sleep. One answer is like, we still don't know. You know what I mean? What we really know is what sleep does for us. Mm-hmm. But he kind of admits, like at the very beginning, like we still have no idea why this is the mechanism that our body uses to do all these things. But all we know is sleep does this and this and this and this and this, and a full book's worth of amazing things for you. So you need to sleep. It doesn't matter why we actually do it. And there's no species on the planet that doesn't go through some kind of sleep period. It doesn't look like ours, obviously, but even plant species have some kind of down regulation during the day. They all have cycles, so that's kind of crazy. The biggest thing that I've taken away so far from the book, I'm almost done with it. I didn't read the whole thing, but I'm almost done. But the biggest thing that I've taken away is how sleep deprivation basically sets up your body to gain weight. Like not sleeping basically sets you up to do everything you need to do to put on weight. And the specific, I actually went back to the book and wrote down the specific thing that he said. So sleep deprivation, and what he's talking about with sleep deprivation is like 6 hours or less on a consistent basis, like night after night. It's like 6 hours or less sleep deprivation. So like I'm getting close to that. But anyway, 6 hours or less every night. The exact thing that he says is in your brain, it increases hunger and appetite. It compromises your impulse control. it increases your food consumption, and specifically your brain makes you want high calorie foods. It decreases your food satiety, which means you don't feel as full from the food that you do eat. And it prevents effective weight loss. So even the weight loss that you do accomplish in a sleep deprived state, it's still not very effective. So like that list right there is like, if you walked into a doctor or if you came to me as a coach and said, hey, I want to put on as much weight as possible, I'm going to tell you to do these things. Increase your appetite, ignore your impulse control, increase your food consumption, especially garbage stuff that's really high calorie and not good for you. Eat foods that decrease your food satiety where you don't feel as full from what you eat. Like, these are all of the things that I would tell you to do to gain weight. And this is exactly what your brain tells your body to do when you don't get enough sleep. And so really, literally, from the most scientific perspective you can have, if you are not sleeping, it is impacting your weight. And it is if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to work on your body composition, you need to sleep, because that could be the one thing that's like totally compromising. And that's what I've been doing with the people that I coach here, is like, one of the things that I ask them about their hydration, and then I ask them about how much they're sleeping. And they're kind of like, why does it matter how much I'm sleeping? Oh, it matters. Like, let me send you this book and I'll tell you how much it matters. But it also, in that sleep deprived state, the weight loss that does happen at night, like while your body is readjusting to everything and recalculating, and all the weight loss that happens in that sleep deprived state is actually from muscle mass and not from body fat. Right. So if you're in a sleep deprived state, your brain is breaking down your muscle mass instead of your body fat. And so that's another thing. Like, if you want to gain weight, it's just like, it just blew my mind reading this, that like,
and the reverse is true. If you want to gain muscle, you need to sleep.
Right.
That's like I mentioned last podcast that I have a lot of respect for bodybuilders, like real bodybuilders, not just someone who's following a bodybuilding split, but like someone who's like legitimately doing it. I had a lot of friends like that. That's where I started training. But I mean, I was told when I was like 15 years old that the most anabolic thing that you could do is sleep. That was a long time ago. I'm getting fed that information, but I just feel like bodybuilders have known a lot of great stuff for a long time, but they're kind of ignored because they're too into themselves. That's the only problem. But yeah, sleep's huge for results in fitness. To put that under like a small asterisk, like a small heading there. Oh, you want results? Then you should probably sleep. What results are you after? Oh, I want to lose weight. Oh, sleep would be good. Oh, I want to gain muscle. Sleep would be pretty good for that too. So
you need to go take a nap.
Yeah. Ashley, what'd you have?
So I have I could talk about this book. We talked about this earlier for a while, but one of the main takeaways that I took from it was, being a mom and raising a little one. I really honed in on chapter 5 of this book, and chapter 5 basically talks about sleep from basically when you're in the womb all the way until adulthood. So I won't cut down each point of that entire chapter because it's a very long chapter, but I will touch on, they talked about sleeping while the baby is in utero, while it's in the womb. And it talked about right before birth, REM sleep. So rapid eye movement versus non-rapid eye movement sleep. They talked about that the baby is actually, it's the last 2 weeks before birth, it gets about 9 hours of REM sleep. And then the last week, it gets 12 hours. And this whole entire time, what REM sleep is doing is it helps the brain form. Like, that's what is happening. So that deep sleep is helping that brain, form in the womb, get all the good neurons and pathways. And, I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I can't go too deep in that, but basically brain formation, cognitive functions. And then when the baby comes out of the womb, he touched on the Go the F to Sleep book, that all the parents read. Mm-hmm. And he talked about how, that's always it's just kind of funny for any parent because you're like, come on, go to sleep. But that first year is so critical within our first year of life. The sleep is very critical. And, I've talked a lot about, I wasn't quite in the right state of mind myself when I had Connor for the first couple of months. But what I would go back and tell myself, and this is if you can, I know there are colicky babies out there. I know that there are other circumstances. But if your baby is healthy and gaining weight, what I would tell any mother out there is let that baby sleep. I had a nurse scare me half to death. She told me, she said, if you don't wake your kid up every 2 to 3 hours, he could get so sick he could die. And he was so angry when I would wake him up. He didn't want to feed. He didn't want to do any of these things. And I wish, like going back and reading this book, it was just like, man, if I would have just let that little one sleep, I would have gotten more sleep, which would have helped my mental state, which we can talk on that for this part of the book as well. But it's helping that baby. It's helping any child, basically, neural pathways and cognitive functions and all sorts of great stuff. So if you can potentially put your kid on I don't want to say a schedule, but seriously, as we slept trained Connor when he was 4 months old. And I know, Emily definitely prioritized sleep for your kids, Jared, and sleep is a huge thing for kiddos. He also talked about, going on later, you switch from rapid eye movement, like mostly REM sleep, to non-REM sleep. And that's because your brain is fully developed, fully formed. But then he talks about that it needs pruning and age shaping. And he talks about a lot of things like schizophrenia and autism. And it's because kids are doing atypical sleeping. So there's no scheduled, if you will, sleeping for them. And so because of this, that can actually really affect your kiddos and how they function, and can actually have these detrimental diseases that could potentially be avoided if you just prioritized their sleep.
It's pretty insane. Yeah. Emily has been really big on the sleep of all of our children from day one, and got it pretty dialed in. Our kids sleep a ton, and that's good. That's, that I mentioned to you guys after I read the book, I just gave her a hug and was like, thank you for making sure our kids, sleep as much as they do. Cause she's been really big. And a lot of it, is not even from like scientific stuff. Like you can just tell when your kid's tired, they're cranky, they don't act the same. And so our kids are pretty well behaved because they're very well rested, all the time. And so I think that goes a long way. So takeaways for me is, the big takeaway, before you think about, I'm really big on one thing in coaching. I give you one thing to work on. You do that, we'll do another thing, and now I feel like going back, I would probably make someone sleep more before I would dive into their nutrition. It used to be nutrition, because the training we kind of get dialed in, and then it'd be like, okay, let's do one thing with nutrition at a time. But now I think I might go back to just be like, you need to sleep more for a lot of the reasons Kyle brought up, and things that I already mentioned. Is you need to really dial in that sleep, because that's the biggest thing. Before you try some new crazy diet, before you start taking any supplements whatsoever and waste your money, sleep is the game changer. Sleep is the performance enhancer that you could be using to become better in every area of your life. But the things that they talk about, the main thing I wanted to point out, something we go over in the fuels course, is just circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is very important. I can't even mention how many times he talks about that in the book. He mentions it in multiple different chapters even. And his biggest thing is, if you listen to Matt Walker in any podcast, the biggest thing he says that okay, if there's just one thing, what is it? What we do? And he said, go to bed the same time every night and wake up the same time every morning, because your circadian rhythm affects so many different things. There are other books that I've read about the circadian code, and I forgot the other one. But anyway, there's so much information and science behind your circadian rhythm and how it affects you. And so I think that's a really good takeaway for people, is just trying to make it consistent. And then tips for actually getting some sleep would be, he mentions get a lot of sun. So a lot of vitamin D, a lot of sunlight, especially in the morning. Avoid alcohol. Mentions getting hot before bed. So you could get in a sauna, or you could get in a hot bath or a hot shower, because then your body's trying to cool down and it helps you fall asleep faster. And then you want to be cold at night. And so get hot, then get cold, before bed. So sleeping at lower temperature. And just some other interesting facts, like driving. He mentions like so many different things. Like I just want to, like, if I ever have to have surgery again, he was talking about like you should ask your doctor your surgeon how much sleep they got, before they operate on you, because, and he goes over the statistics on, a sleep deprived surgeon and how many mistakes they make. And I'm like, could you actually do that? Like, I'd love to, if I was about to get surgery, be like, hey man, how much did you sleep? One, he might have answered the question. Two, he might be like, I got about, solid 5 hours. I'd be like, yeah.
I need you to get 8, bro.
I mean, if it's brain surgery, I'd probably absolutely be like, dude, we're going to reschedule. Like, but anyway, yeah, he goes over stuff like that. Driving, how many car accidents they think happen due to these micro sleeps is what he calls them, and this other stuff. And your reaction time is so much less. So
it's more dangerous than drunk driving.
Yeah. And
it really is.
Yeah. And this whole lack of sleep badge of honor thing, hopefully, I mean, I've been trying to kill it for years. It's still around. I'm seeing people like wise up, because, the Jocko podcast is really popular. And Jocko doesn't get a lot of sleep. Jocko's wrong. Like, sorry, like Jocko's awesome, but he's also wrong about sleep. But I've listened to his podcast and I hear him mention, like, hey, this works for me. It's probably not going to work for you. You should probably get some more sleep, because he knows sleep's important. But if you're just trying to mimic Jocko and not listening to his words, you're going to be a lesser human being. So we'll put it that way. Get your sleep. And then the other just interesting studies was they followed, I think it's people in Asia for 14 years. I forgot how many people in the study, but those who slept less than 6 hours were 500% more likely to have cardiac arrest. And then another study of 500,000 people who slept 6 hours or less increased your chance of just a cardiovascular disease by greater than 45%. So just, it's crazy stuff, like all the way down to your heart health. So, I mean, sleep. But then my last biggest takeaway is read the freaking book. Because what did we cover? Like 0.5% of what he goes over, maybe?
Not even.
And just things that we found interesting, like read the book, listen to the book, whatever. It's a really good book. You guys have anything else?
No. Oh, cool. Don't feel bad.
I mean, I have a ton of stuff, but read the book, because I can't cover it all right here. Yeah.
And when I started getting more sleep, I felt lazy. I was like, and that's just all like psychological, right? Like I felt like I could get up, I could do more, like I could be getting more done in a day with not sleeping 8 or 9 hours. But once you experience it on a longer timeline, like I said, it took like a month. I'm like, wow, this is great. I don't really get tired. Like I go to bed, I'm like, I guess I'll go to sleep now, but I'm not tired, and I think that's a huge difference.
I think that badge of honor thing that you're talking about too kind of gets passed down. What we're talking about kids, I think that gets passed down to kids too. Like I think that gets to a certain point, they get to a certain age, and it's like society, like people around you start like expecting your kids to not sleep as much. And it's like, okay, well the kids have to be up, we need to compromise their sleep too. And it's like their brain, like when is it that our brains actually stop growing? I don't remember when it is, but it's like, it's much later than 3 years old. You know what I mean?
Like the male brain, they say isn't fully developed until you're like in your early 20s.
And he talks about that like in teens and stuff, like 16s, like their adult part of the brain is in the back versus their adolescent part of the brain is in the front, because it hasn't fully formed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Read the book, people.
Yeah, read the book, but it's just
keep copies so you can give it to jerks at your house who expect your kids to not be sleeping.
They just won't come to my house anymore. That's just it.
All right, well, we'll hit this workout real quick and then get out of here. I'll brief it, and then if you guys just want to talk about any tips, not sure if you guys have done it or not. So it's under pressure. It's 4 time. You're going to complete 200 kipping pull-ups or 100 strict pull-ups. The reason the or is there is 200 kipping is a lot. That could be a lot on your shoulder, especially if you're not accustomed to them or if you're doing them improperly. So I would say, probably do 100 strict if you're not as familiar with the movement. Anyway, so that's the total amount of reps. And then every time you drop from the pull-up bar, do 100 double unders or 200 single unders. And you have a time cap of 35 minutes. So a lot of pull-ups, a lot of double unders, especially if you get down towards the end of those 100 strict pull-ups and you're doing like one pull-up or two pull-ups and then you touch the ground and you have to do more double unders. It gets really insane really fast. Also, I put a time cap on it. I know I've done this one a few times and I enjoy it. Because it's just such a challenge. Like it's one of those, like, I feel like I programmed it very well because I wish I had Joe here. I'm trying to think of how he could cheat it. He's always trying to cheat him.
Yeah.
But you like almost can't cheat this one. Like if you want to hang from the bar for a long period of time and not touch the ground, that's not really helpful in pull-ups. Like your grip's just going to get shot, especially the further you get into the workout. So I feel like I have eliminated any way you can cheat it, but I'd love to hear tips or strategies from you guys.
So I would say flip around and hang from your feet instead and rest your arms instead of hitting the ground. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. The effort that it would take for you to get your feet up there. Anyway,
I'm gonna try.
Yeah, I would
see if I can do all 100 without touching the ground.
That's how you did Sally the first time, right? You tried to hang from the bar the whole time and not get off the bar.
Yeah, well, I tried to like not. Yeah, it didn't work for very long, but that's how I started.
No. Yeah, I haven't done this one, but I would just say try to pace it out. Try to set your number early. I think we've said that on other workouts is try to set. Okay, I'm definitely gonna try to hit 5 pull-ups before I drop. Or early on, you try to hit 10 pull-ups or whatever, and then just crank your jump rope out like as fast as you can. Don't take time. I think it was like the one that published this week. Don't step away from the bar for a long time. That's what I say about this one. Don't step away from the rope for a long time. Like the rope is there, you hit the ground, you got to go. You know what I mean? So just pick it up, crank it out, and then get back on the bar. So,
especially if you want to finish.
Right.
Yeah.
You've only got, and that's the thing, you've only got 35 minutes. Like we take care of you. Okay. We might put you in a few minutes of hating yourself, and us.
It's only 35 minutes.
Our number one rule is for you to not die. You know what I mean? So you're not going to die, but just if you want to finish in 35 minutes, you can't just sit around and stare at that jump rope. Like those double unders have to come. So
or you could do what I'm going to officially call the bat strategy and just never touch the ground. So you never have to do any, just keep
the bat strategy.
Just keep hanging upside down. I'd also like to know, like from like a blood pressure standpoint, like how that's going to make some, I'm going to try it. Like I'll honestly try it out. I'll do a pull up. I'll try to flip to my feet and hang, but I'm probably going to like and switch back. I'm going to do it because I know I won't be able to do all 100. So I'll let you guys know when my feet first touch the ground because I won't do it again after that. So when I do it this week, I'll try that. But I bet I'm going to get like dizzy or something. Like
we need a video.
Yeah, I'll do a video as well. Yeah, if it doesn't get posted on Instagram, it didn't happen. All right, Ashley, what do you got? Anything?
You need a safety net. I don't want you falling on your head. Like that would be awful.
I'll keep my hands like this. Hands above the head when I'm upside down. So I'll just go straight into a handstand push-up. There you go.
Lord. My tip would be make sure you scale accordingly. So, for me, I know that I can only do about 5 strict pull-ups in a row. And so I'm not going to go out and I could do 100 strict pull-ups, but I would potentially use a band, like a band that I know that I can, do at least 10. Or, say I'm going to tap out and do, or put the barbell in the rack and do some rows. So body row, you would call it an inverted row. Yeah. Isn't that what you would call that? So I would just do an inverted row, make sure that it mimics kind of, make yourself vertical enough that you are mimicking kind of a pull up, if you will, in that rack. Make sure you do that correctly. Make sure the barbell is not facing outward, it's going into the rack so you don't fall. Or if you do 200 kipping, just what Jared said, make sure that you break those up accordingly. And if you don't have doubles, go ahead and do singles. Yeah, that would be my tip for this.
Yeah, my tip is don't do the bat strategy. It's a really bad idea. I might give it a try for a minute, but it is really bad idea and probably really dangerous. But that's it. That's all I have. I'll say it as I've been saying it. If you guys enjoy the podcast, you want to support what we're doing, this is not the last time we'll talk about concurrent training, because it's what we do around here. And more research is being published all the time. And hopefully, it gets more and more conclusive on the absolute best way. But I also feel like we're kind of the non-scientific approach to finding out the best way. And those are some things that I want to talk about more. But if you guys want to support it or be a part of the cutting edge concurrent training methodology out there, go sign up for a trial at GarageGymAthlete.com. But other than that, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to GarageGymAthlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.